Flexible seating? What's that? Oh, it's this. I'm going to show you. So, a lot of people have traditional classroom seating, what we would basically think of as long tables and chairs or individual desks and chairs in rows. A whole lot of people now probably do something kind of like this, where it's in a group or a mix of the two or different shapes, or they try to make it match the activity or the day, different things that they're doing. I have done group stuff for a long time, but I used to be really methodical about it and was very, it has to be so organized. Everybody has to be in a group of 4, and everybody has these little color-coded things on their desks, and according to your color, you have this job, and that's what you do every day when you come in, and da-da-da. And it had its benefits, but one of the things that you just have to know from go on flexible seating is you're going to give up a little bit of the order, but you're going to get back a whole lot more in student engagement. It has been my experience, at least, and I think of some other people. So I'm just going to kind of walk around the room and show you kind of what I do. It's a little bit edited from last year. I'm just about to start another school year. Last year was my first year doing flexible seating. I teach Spanish at a high school, so I try to have a little bit of culture involved, kind of more of a group and cafe kind of an atmosphere in here, even though obviously sometimes there's stuff that they have to do as an individual. So I'll kind of walk you through what I have and kind of how I got it. So obviously I still have some of the individual seating. I have 2 groups left this year from the individual seating. And so basically anytime that we're doing a test or any time where it just kind of works better for the activity, we break those apart. If we're having some kind of a food day or something, obviously I have to move desks around and stuff like that. But the other ones that are tables, obviously you can't break apart, but it really hasn't been too big of a deal for us. I have a testing wall on one end of the room, and so everybody knows that even though we don't have exactly our own seats, and well, we have our own seats for the most part, but don't have exactly our own desks, it's still possible to kind of organize yourself in a way where you're not really close to someone else and you are facing the testing wall for the most part. And I do that just in terms of honesty, so I can walk around pretty easily and make sure everybody's on task and looking at their own work if it's a test scenario. What else was I going to say about that? Well, I'll get back to that. So anyway, over here, this little desk I had with a little group last year, but it was almost kind of too little, so I'm using it this year as kind of like a little conference station, and we'll see if that works out pretty well, because a lot of times I kind of just informally meet with students as they're working on stuff. It's hard to kind of make a formal appointment in the middle of class for me, but we'll see how that goes. I just got this big desk. It's quite large, actually. It looks like I'm going to seat about 8 people at this one. But I'm hoping it hangs in there. It's a little bit wobbly, but it's very, very heavy. So I'm hoping that it lasts for a long time. I like it. I got it for free on Craigslist over the summer. That's my number 1 tip for you, is be checking Craigslist free a lot, especially around the breaks, summer, winter, even spring break, stuff like that. I also reached out to students and got some stuff from students. This desk over here, which is actually kind of a nice-ish wooden desk, but I keep this bancho on it. And I also got free from Craigslist. The chairs and a couple of the things that I have or had last year and have since edited out are things that I got from a friend who had a daycare and they were closing and they weren't keeping some of their furniture. And so I got some of that. The desk, some of the chairs as well, if they're not kind of the standard maroon ones here, if they're different ones, I got those either from my friend's daycare or from Craigslist. I got these those are little box seats, but I'm not sure if I'm going to really keep them or not this year, but I had them last year, use them sometimes. The couch was actually a donation from a student, and I basically just kind of talked to the students about it a lot last year when we were starting. We had, I did like Google surveys in the beginning. I read a lot of articles and blogs and tried to get information and talked to the students about it. and said, do you guys have any furniture that you're trying to get rid of or that you just don't need? Something that's not like super, super nice, that wouldn't be weird to ask you to give us to the school or to the classroom, but something that, you would feel comfortable giving. So this was a couch that was offered, and it was pretty decent, actually. It's in really good shape. There are a lot of couches and stuff on Craigslist. And I know some people have gone that route for their couches. I have tried to stick with just like the straight surface things from Craigslist, so that cleaning hasn't had to have been too big of a deal for me. If it was something like a couch, they typically recommend that you basically deal with bed bug possibilities and things like that by doing dicompensatious earth, or no sé cómo se llama, whatever it's called. And I just really didn't have time and energy to deal with that. So I accepted this one from this student, and I knew them well enough to basically just trust that it was not going to be a bed bug issue. But if it was something from Craigslist or somebody I didn't know, I definitely would have taken that extra step to do that. Just kind of some random tall chairs I've kind of come across around the school that weren't being used. A coffee table from my house that we weren't really using. Let's see. Oh, and these kind of nice-ish, loungy sort of chairs. They're actually supposed to be more straight up, like couch chairs. They were from our library. So one of the people that I talked to when I was first starting this was our librarian. And I said, hey, I know you guys have a lot of furniture down there in the library. If you're ever maybe getting rid of any of it, if you would want to shift it up here for me, because I'm doing flexible seating. And they were like, oh yeah, actually we're just about to get rid of some of it. And so basically they have this and a bunch of other different seating down in the library, and the back legs had broken off, or one of them had broken off. So I just ended up taking out the other leg from each of them. It's 3 individual pieces. And then I just kind of shoved it up against the wall. And I mean, it's kind of, you lean back a little bit, but the kids seem to really like it for the most part. It's different in every class. I know that some people, their concern when they look into flexible seating is that if they think, well, everybody's going to want to sit on the couch every day, and or the comfy seating or something like that. That has not really been my experience. I really haven't had any kind of fighting over it. I do find that people tend to be, once they've sat there for a while, they kind of feel like it's their seat, like they've claimed it. And so if that kind of starts to happen a lot in a certain class, I might go over and kind of just mention something like, hey, next time, why don't you just switch around, just so we're being fair. And so, other people who maybe don't feel comfortable coming and sitting where you've been for the last 10 classes can come in and, feel comfortable taking that seat for a day, just so that they have that. But for the most part, there's been a lot of moving around and rotating. It hasn't been the exact same people. And then even with these comfy seats, they're super popular in all my classes. And then I had this one class where I don't know if it was because it was the morning, it was early and they didn't want to fall asleep or what, but there was only one girl that every single day she would come over here, one person. And in all the other classes, there would be like 5 kids over here. But in that one class, there was just the one. But I did find that especially the bigger tables that are actual tables, they would tend to fill up pretty quickly as people would come in. People kind of had their friends and stuff like that. And that was one of those things that for me was, it was a little bit of a challenge because, in my opinion, one of the great things about education is that it's supposed to be this great equalizer, and you have kids of every single background and ethnicity. You have rich kids, poor kids, everything in between, and they're where the teacher tells them. And so, in addition to dealing with behavior things, there I've got some extra seats in the back. I'm not sure if I'm going to need them or not, but in addition to dealing with behavior things, my big feeling on that is it puts everybody in a place of equality. And so everyone is thinking, they need to be around everybody all the time. They need to be okay with working with anybody at any time. And it gives people a chance to maybe even develop great friendships that they otherwise wouldn't if they just go and sit down next to the person that's already their BFF. So anyway, that's the basic idea there, and that's why the flexible seating, I was a little bit afraid of it at first because I didn't want the same people sitting by the same exact people. And I did find a little bit of that, but kind of like with the couch seating, I would just go around if I saw that happening a lot, and I would say, hey, I noticed that you're always with this person, that person, why don't you sit over here this time? I mean, it was kind of informal, but I would just talk to them about it, and it seemed to work. And for the most part, the flexibility of the seating kind of worked to that advantage anyway. People didn't necessarily feel so rigidly in their spots. So sometimes they would just kind of sit with a different group anyway. And then also sometimes if I felt like it would be helpful, I would just literally move where the desks were and things like that. So then it kind of threw things off, and they came in and were like, oh, where am I going to sit? Do I sit in the table that I was at before? Do I sit in the part of the room where I was before? Do I find my friend? What do I do? Es mi cara, it's my face. So we're back. So the other thing I was saying is, I have a high school classroom, and I would say the vast majority of what I've seen, both in terms of videos or online blogs, stuff like that, has been with elementary school, and it's very open. And then some middle school, very, very little have I seen in terms of flexible seating with high school. I've seen a lot of like moving the desks around, but not really like true flexible seating where the students have a voice in where they sit, and there's a mix of different styles of seating and stuff like that, not just placements. And it might not be the best fit for every single class. I mean, I'm just thinking here, like if you're in a science class doing a lab or something like that, maybe you need everything to be really uniform and stuff like that. For me, in a world language class, it's perfect. I've really liked it. Like I said, I kind of got over my own organization needs, and the things that I basically had to think about at the high school level were that it be comfortable for basically children who are basically almost adults, because my kids are 15, 16, 17, 18. A lot of them are 17 and 18. So for instance, a whole lot of the elementary school seating was like open mat or cushions on a floor or short table, like you take a table or desk and you lower it, and you take other ones and you make it higher. And, especially with the female students, but just in general, if you have high school students that are lounging around on the ground and stuff like that, depending on what they're wearing, they can be very uncomfortable, or they can make someone else very uncomfortable. And that was something that I was very, cognizant of whenever I was kind of figuring out what my actual seating would look like. I love the idea of different levels and heights, in the seating. And I do have a little bit of a mix on that. Especially because like in some of the chairs and in the couch and the other seating, they don't really actively use the writing space necessarily. A lot of times they just write on their lap, or they use, like we have these little tablitas, these little clipboards, basically writing boards, little dry erase marker boards, and you put that on your lap and then you write on that. And that's really been fine for all the students. Whether they're writing something that's quick or they're doing something longer, doing a test, that's really been the fix for if they're in more of a comfy kind of a seat. Because especially with high school, and I teach the advanced levels, AP and IB, so there are definitely times when the students have to sit there and read for a really long time, or write an essay, or write for an hour sometimes in AP, stuff like that. So that's been what we have done. So we definitely needed a writing space for the most part, but like I said, the tablas or the dry erase marker boards have worked fine. But I really didn't feel comfortable doing like the really down on the ground, just throw yourself anywhere kind of a seat, because of, dress code issues, people being uncomfortable, stuff like that. And especially in a large public high school, that's just something that's a reality. Maybe if you're somewhere where there's a uniform or something like that, maybe that wouldn't be as much of an issue. But for me, with high schoolers, I'm thinking I don't want 17-year-olds rolling around on the floor, stuff like that. So that's kind of better maybe for elementary school, maybe middle school, but for high school, that was something I didn't want to do. And then I really liked the idea of standing desk, like we're always being told that we're, ruining our backs because we're sitting too much. And that we all need to be doing standing desks and things like that. And I thought about that, and I included pictures when I did the Google surveys of my students, and I asked them, to kind of vote on which things that they specifically thought would be good and stuff like that when I was first starting. And I had a lot of comments who said I definitely don't want a standing desk. Don't get a standing desk. I don't ever want to stand. I don't like using my legs. I want to sit down. Lots of things like that. So I don't know how many of you teach high school, but a lot of times in the morning when these kids come in, they're just trying to stay awake. And I thought it would be a good thing for standing desks, and supposedly it's good for your back, but I just got that overwhelming message from my students. We don't want to stand up. Please just let us come in and sit down. So, a lot of times in class we're standing anyway. Like I said, I teach world language, and pretty much every single day we start with an extended partnering and conversation of the day kind of a thing, and that goes on for a while, and they're partnering and they're wandering the room and partnering with different students. So they definitely stand, but I took that, I tried to listen to the students and let them have a voice in that, and I didn't want to put in seating that no one was telling me they wanted and lots of people were telling me they didn't want, so I didn't do that. Let's see. But yeah, also in terms of student resources, just try to think maybe outside of the box. I live in a place where there's several home offices, and so there's lots of vendors and home office people, and I kind of specifically would address that with the students and say, hey, does anybody have a contact or anything like that? One girl, her dad worked for a vendor that had furniture, so I was like, well, perfect. And so he gave us like this little coffee table and a couple of chairs, and it was great for a little bit. But what I kind of figured out at some point was what he had given us was, it had to have been a display, probably designed to look like the furniture they sell, but not really to stand up like the furniture that they sell, because very, very quickly the stuff was just like coming apart, and it was brand new, like it had not been sat on at all by anybody. And so the newest stuff in my room was the first to fall apart last year. So just, it's good to maybe reach out and think about those contacts, but you might specify, like, was this a display, or is this something that actually would be meant to endure for a long time? Because I definitely had some stuff fall apart last year, but at the same time, it's always a work in progress, just like anything that you're doing in the classroom. Monitor and adjust, and if something's not working, change it. So it's been a work in progress. It's still a work in progress. But that's it. That's my take on the flexible seating so far. I guess I'm going to probably post this on the YouTube channel, so just let me know in the comments if you have a specific question or something like that, and I will try to answer that. All right, muchísimas gracias. See you guys later.